Hello, my name is Jocelyn Medrek, Executive Director at Great Marriages for Sheboygan County. Today we are going to hear Brittany's story. It's a story about depression, and it's a story about how we almost lost Brittany 2 years ago. The mission at Great Marriages is to prepare and strengthen relationships, enrich marriages, and keep families together. Depression and suicide can rip families apart. So it is our hope and it is our prayer that sharing Brittany's story with you today would give you some insight in how you can help people that you love through their struggles. And maybe you listen to Brittany's story and you think, that's me, I'm really struggling right now. We ask that you would please just reach out to someone that you trust, tell them, and get the help that you need. Don't go through this alone. So next, I'm going to let Brittany share her story with you. Please give her your undivided attention as she shares her story, because she's very brave to do this for us today. So Brittany, just take us back to your journey of where you were at a few years ago to where you're at today.
So like you said, the big episode of mine really happened a few years ago, but I noticed that I had a lot of anxiety that started in high school even, but I just kept pushing it aside. I was huge into volleyball, club, high school, everything like that. So I put all my energy into sports and just pushed those feelings that I had aside. I never really talked to anybody because I just thought I could handle it on my own, things like that. So then I go to college, still there. There's a lot of pressures, between playing college sports and things like that. But once again, I held on to volleyball, and that was my outlet. Then after college, you're done, the sports are gone. So then I started getting in unhealthy relationships, and I could feel my depression, anxiety getting worse, but I pushed it aside. And then I went on an amazing trip with my cousin, really dove into traveling. So that was like another outlet for me. So it's like I realized in my past that I kept finding different outlets to harvest that energy into, so I didn't have to feel it, but it was still there. The final breaking straw, I lost a grandparent. That's really hard, but we all do. I lost one in high school, and then I lost one recently. And then over that time, I went through a breakup, which hindsight now, I look back, super great. I'm healthier now without that, but we don't realize that in the time. And so I don't want to say that I was depressed because I lost him, but for me, it was just the last straw, because once again, I was putting that energy into places I shouldn't instead of handling it. So a bunch of friends came, helped me move out because we were living together at the time, and my friends were there, and new roommates were there undeniably for me. They helped me through so much, but it was still getting worse, and I still wasn't handling the correct way. I was on different medications, and the doctor I was seeing at the time just kept putting me on more and more, which also wasn't healthy. She just kept trying new things, and that might have been a spiraling effect for me.
Okay.
As well, genetically, in my family, we have anxiety and depression. So I think that's a huge trigger for me, because there was no reason I should have anxiety. I have such supportive family and friends and great environment, but it's hard still. Like sometimes there's not a reason why you feel the way you do. So then I had a job at the time, worked there a little over a year, but it was to the point where I couldn't go to work anymore. I'd break down at work. I wasn't feeling good. I wasn't eating. So then I took FMLA leave. And I spent almost 3 months in bed. I lost 60 pounds within a few weeks. It was just horrible. But then I would still try to get out. I'd still do things with friends. I still try to tell my family, like, something's wrong, I'm not right. But I am a cheerful, very positive person. So I think from them, they're like, oh, but you're Brittany, you're going to be fine. Oh, but you're Brittany, you're going to be fine. So they just, not that they didn't believe me, but they just thought I was going to be okay, that it wouldn't be this bad. So when it came to the day that I was done, I started, there was a long time I had the thoughts of suicide, but never a plan. And then I started making my plan, and I started acting upon it. And then I couldn't, I have 4 nieces and a nephew, and I couldn't even think of them and feel anything. It's like this darkness overcomes you, and it's in your core, and you feel the only way you can get rid of it is to just be done. And I was texting some friends that night, and they could tell I was in a dark place, and they were worried, and not all of them lived close, and some were on their way back to town where I was living, and I was getting ready and I was writing my letter, and I heard a knock at the door, and I went and answered it, and it was actually the police. So my friends did a welfare check on me because they knew I was in a dark place. So I'm really blessed in that aspect, because I wouldn't be here right now if it wasn't for them. And looking back, I mean, I feel like it's a very selfish move, but at the time, the darkness that overcomes you, I mean, my nieces were little and my nephew was young, and I can't even think of a 2-year-old and want to live. Like, I feel horrible. And like now, you know, that we live in different towns not far away, but when I leave, they cry, let alone to know that I wouldn't be there for them ever again. That just makes me sick. But from there, I went inpatient for a little over a week. And then I came out and I quit the job that I was at. I mean, I actually quit it probably quite some time before, because I knew I had to focus on me and getting help, and money, nothing else mattered. I just needed to focus on me. So from there, I had a lot of friends reach out. I grew up Catholic in the religion with God in my life, but definitely through college and that, I strayed away. And I had a really good friend who brought me back. So I'm a member of Word of Grace now. And for me, that helped unbelievably. I didn't want to get out of bed. There wasn't a day that I didn't want to get out of bed. And every Sunday, she'd make me get out of bed. So I think being a member here has helped me more than I could ever explain, in bringing my life back to God, that knowing that I have Him, I can do anything that I need. So that's really, really helped me. I changed jobs. Not that I didn't love my other job. I loved it so much, and I was working with children with autism, and I loved that. But now I am a 4K aide at Oostburg Elementary, and that job alone gives me so much joy. And even my coworkers and that, just, I don't know, just knowing that's where I belong, and that's why I'm still here. On some of my darkest days, just knowing going to work is going to brighten my day, because those kids really make me smile. I mean, my hair's purple. I did it for Purple Day for them, you know, just trying to have fun in these crazy times we're living in. And so I think just taking those right steps, consistently on medication, seeing a therapist, and I just know that some days if I'm having a day, it's okay. I can lay in bed for a few hours, but I know that the next day, or I set a time that I have to get up and do something. I have to set mini goals for me, because you're still going to have the days that you feel you're not okay, which is absolutely okay to not feel that way.
Right. Yeah.
But just getting there and knowing those limits is hard. And just knowing that I couldn't be here. I know it scares my family, and really did. They didn't realize, I mean, I called my parents from when I was inpatient, and I said, I was attempting suicide tonight, and, you know, I mean, the bathtub was getting filled, I had the knife, you know, I'm writing my goodbye letter, and without that welfare check, I wouldn't be here. So, not that I didn't want to tell my family, but it's hard. It's hard to tell people that you're really not okay, that you're having those thoughts, and you just want that, I don't know what else to explain it besides darkness inside you that just consumes you. And it's sickening because you just can't get it out. Nothing feels right. You just want it to be gone, and the only way is you feel to end your life.
There, a few weeks ago, the school district that you work in experienced a suicide. A beautiful senior, it's gonna make me cry, in high school. And, you know, what would you want to say to those high school students that may be struggling right now, maybe her friends, maybe those who are feeling the same way that she felt? You just explained a little bit that it just feels like darkness. How do you get people to ask for help? Like you didn't.
No, I didn't.
Well, you kind of did, because you texted your friends, so they knew something was up, which saved you. But what would you want to tell those students who may be suffering because they lost their friend, or students that may be feeling just like she did?
Right. Well, first, it's absolutely not their fault at all. They couldn't have done nothing to change what had happened to her. There's a lot of times that people, when they found out what I did go through, that they were like, but you're Brittany, that's not right. Are you talking about the right Brittany? Like, they couldn't believe it, because I was the person that would, you know, do my best to help others. And from what I've heard, Anna was the same way. She was very strong, and she hid it well. I mean, there was times that she might have said she was sad, but I guess the signs that you can look for are withdrawal. I mean, there was days that I would spend in my bed all the time, and I would just tell my friends, don't worry, I'm just tired, you know, or I don't feel good. So we make excuses. We make a lot of excuses to hide the truth. I I mean, you just have to look for those change in behaviors, or even if they just give you one time that a friend says, I feel anxious, or I don't feel right, something feels off, just dive in. And if you're not comfortable doing that, ask some of their family members, or tell, a close teacher or a counselor or something. And it's not easy reaching out. I mean, I know there's phone lines and things like that. I'm a person that personally, I could never just pick up that line and say, hey, I don't feel good, I'm ready to commit suicide. I personally can't do that, but that is a great option if somebody feels comfortable. But I guess just finding someone that's close to them and saying, hey, so-and-so has been withdrawing and things like that. It's hard to look for those because everyone experiences depression, anxiety in different ways.
Right. And we're just talking about your story today. We don't want everyone to think this is exactly how it might be for them. This is your story, but I think people can really learn from all the things that you just said right there. Look for those signs. Maybe they're not eating. I mean, you said you lost 60 pounds in how many weeks?
Yep.
3 weeks or something?
Couple weeks, yeah.
I mean, that's
I did it. And that's something for me. Some people, when they're in depression, they overeat.
Right.
For me, and I've talked to my therapist with this, at that point you feel like you have no control. So the only thing you feel you have control over is your life. So that's another reason that others commit suicide, is that feeling of control as well. I control my eating, and I would get so upset that I couldn't even eat. I mean, my roommates were making me shakes, and I would take a sip and I would just roll over and go back to sleep. I mean, I slept for weeks on end. It was insane, but then I still felt exhausted. So just looking for those exhaustion patterns, overeating, undereating, things like that. And then just withdrawing, or just, usually if they're ready to go get ice cream or something and they're telling you no, simple things like that. Don't overanalyze, but if it happens repetitively, then it's something to definitely
little changes in behavior
check into.
Okay. What were you feeling at that time? You said darkness. Is there anything anyone could have done in your situation to intervene that you feel like we didn't talk about yet?
You mean my friends or family intervening? I guess you can kind of compare it to somebody that's an alcoholic or addicted to drugs. Until it's their choice to make a change, it's the same thing. You're not, or even just going to the doctor, things like that. A lot of them did, I think, understand that I was getting severe. I mean, they had people checking on me often, but that moment I was alone, I took advantage of that opportunity. And that was my plan. But I mean, I don't want to put the blame or anything on them, because I did. I hid it well. I mean, the day before, I was with a big group of friends from college, and we were hanging out. I believe it was a golf outing, and we were, nobody would have noticed. Right.
Wow.
And that's what's hard, is because in a lot of these situations, you're still living life like nothing's wrong. You are still doing things that are preparing for the next day, the next week, planning for the next month. But in your heart, I might not make it to that far. So
what do you wish people knew about individuals that are at risk of suicide or feeling suicidal? Is there anything like that you could encourage people around? Like you're saying, you might not even know. Is there anything you would encourage people that we haven't talked about maybe to look for? Or
I guess if it has happened, or if people in your life, like I told my family, because they were really hurt that maybe I didn't care about them, or they weren't doing enough for me, that they weren't giving me enough love. But it's not that. I love them wholeheartedly. I mean, even then, that moment, I still knew I loved them, but it's like you have no emotion. You have you have so much feeling, but none at all. It's like so consumed by this darkness, and you can't feel the light. For me, I mean, turning back to God, like I didn't before that. Like, I mean, now I look back and I'm like, nope, God has me. He's number one. I have God, and that's all I need. And I know for me too, a huge counselor is my pastors here at church. I can talk to them.
Good.
Or like I said, my close friend. I can turn to them for religion, and not everyone's okay with that. So I guess there's other outlets too, like therapy, things like that. But I'm willing to take anybody to church or sit down and talk to them. And even the high schoolers at Oostburg, like they don't need to know me, but living through this, that I'm not a counselor or anything, but I could give them that comfort, or let's talk, or
and hope.
What are those feelings?
You're still here.
I'm still here. So, you can make it through that darkness. I mean,
how long would you say, with people after you almost took your life. Like, how would you encourage people to come alongside of you? Like, I don't know that people know what to do or what to say to somebody who almost took their life. What did you appreciate, and did you need to be checked in on every day? I mean, what are kinds of things that people could do if somebody doesn't take their life? Like, what did you need after that?
Right.
And this is just you.
Right, this is
but
me.
if we can help somebody, like, what did you need?
So like I said, I spend a lot of time in bed. So even those people that would come over, they knew I was at my house and they're like, we are going for a walk today.
Okay.
Whether it's a 5-minute walk, an hour walk, whatever it is, we're going to get outside, we're going to get fresh air. Constant text and phone calls. It was to the point, because I didn't want to be on my phone. I didn't, because I didn't want to talk to people. But they almost forced themselves into my life, and I'm okay with that. Like I said, my friend Katie pulled me out of bed and she's like, you're coming to church, I'm meeting you there, let's get there early. I mean, it was like I started feeling guilty then that I wouldn't be going and doing these things with them, and that guilt turned into me just being a healthier person. So I think just not going after them, you know, but just let me sit by you and let's watch a funny movie. Because sometimes it was nice just to have somebody at the house sitting on the couch with me, don't talk to me, but just having that presence was comforting for me.
So you weren't alone, maybe. Maybe it wasn't good to be alone.
Being alone is the hardest, darkest time. I mean, and that's why that night I was ready to take my life, because I was alone. And it just seemed so easy, and I felt like I had no one, but I had everyone. And the years since, how much stuff has happened. More hard times, but I made it through those hard times because those times, looking back, are harder than what I even lived through, but I was there for people, and I know that I had purpose, and I'm with these different families and things like that because God was like, this is your purpose, this is your plan. So he wasn't ready to let me go that night.
No, and he's going to use what happened to you for good for other people. Right now, like what you're doing right now. How did hopelessness play into your feelings? Like you said, you were a very upbeat person, but then you must have felt hopeless. Did you feel hopeless?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the highs were high and the lows were low. It's very much a roller coaster. So if I was with people, around people, I'm feeling great, I'm feeling good. But like I said, when you're alone, you feel hopeless. Or it's a Saturday night and I'm, 24, 26 years old, I should be doing something. But it's like, no, it's okay to have a chill night. It's okay to be alone. It's time for you. And I think that's what's hard to realize, that a lot of people feel like they should be constantly going, or you have to meet the status quo of whatever it may be. If you're in school, if it's your grades or things like that. So like, don't feel hopeless. Like, it's okay to have downtime. It's okay to not be in the top 10 in your class. It's okay for whatever it may be that you're dealing with in your life. But once again, like I said, like, even though I could logically think about those and I could tell myself, Brittany, you are fine, stop feeling this way. Like, people have it worse. They have cancer. They've lost people to this, to that. But you can't compare your story to someone else's. And I think that's what was really hard for me, was that I always wanted to compare my story. I'm like, people have it way worse than me. Like, people have it way worse. And then I'd feel guilty, but that would make me more hopeless. So it's just like this vicious circle of what plays into how you feel.
And I think right now there's a lot of students, especially, I'm thinking of college students. I have one myself, and it's hard. They're alone a lot. They're just in their dorm rooms. If they don't have a roommate that they know, or their roommate has friends and is off, they're by themselves. So hopefully we can encourage some of them too. It's okay to be by yourself, but don't get to that point where you're hopeless. Like, you reach out to some friends, or maybe it's just one person that someone reaches out to.
And for me, for those activities, whether it's silly, but like coloring or diving into my Bible and journaling or listening to podcasts, there's so many options that you can do for self-reflection and doing self-care. But at that time, it's hard because you don't want to be alive. So it's like, where is that balance? So even right now, like, I would totally FaceTime someone if they were struggling, or meet up if they were comfortable, and show them some of the things that I did. And I still do when I'm alone.
Good. And we're going to put up some resources after we're done for people. So if you want to be part of those resources, we can also put, if you have I'm old. I don't have Instagram
Yeah.
or whatever, but however you want to connect with people, we can put that up.
That's a huge thing too. I mean, for me, like even though I like talking to friends, sometimes knowing that somebody else went through it made me feel better, and I like talking to that person. After the whole episode now, looking back, it's like comforting to know that other people go through pain, which is horrible to say, but it's comforting because you can feed off of each other and grow together.
You can relate to one another, and absolutely. Do you believe, I know the answer to this, but do you believe there is hope now that you are mentally healthier? Talk a little bit about hope.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, looking back at it, I can't believe how dark of a place I was and how much I felt like the light would never shine again. And now I just look at people that are suffering. I'm like, it's going to be okay. It's okay to not be okay in this moment. It's okay to lay in bed for the time that you need, but we need to get up eventually. We need to do things, and you need to push through because there is hope. And that's the hardest part, is like, people need to know it's okay to have bad days, to have rough days. But you know what? If I'm going to lay in my bed all day and sulk today for whatever reason, that is so okay. But tomorrow's a new day. Let's say it's a Sunday. I'm going to go on a walk. I'm going to meet this person for lunch. Just those little things. I even know after I came out of all of this, you were like, let's get lunch together. Like, those moments help me so much. Even just those little things that people don't even realize how much they impacted my life through all that.
Good. So were there any self-defeating thoughts that maybe reoccurred to you? Maybe it wasn't just 2 years ago, but maybe it was even farther back that maybe led up to you deciding to take your life?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there was a lot of hardships throughout. Like I said, the breakups, the loss of grandparents, there's those major life points that all of us end up going through that were just kind of the, final trigger. But I mean, in high school, I went to a huge high school, but even like in 7th, 8th grade, the girls, not all of them, I had really close friends, but a lot of people judging about you back then, at least, what brand clothes you're wearing. And my family, like, they supported us and they did what they could, but I couldn't always have the top brands. And then the people that are like judging you for that. And now I look back and I'm like, I'm happy I didn't have those brands. I'm happy I didn't do that, meeting in, like, even now, I know a lot of kids deal with social media, and even seeing those perfect lives that aren't really perfect. So I think I started comparing myself to that as I'm sad in my room and I'm going through Facebook and Instagram, and I'm like, oh, these people are so happy. Look at all these things they're doing, but here I am. Yeah. And that's, it's a lot of that. It's a lot of those pressures from the world. And like I said too, I mean, a huge thing was losing God for me and drifting away. I mean, I went to church a few times with like my friend in college and things like that, but until I fully came to him and talking about all of that, and I mean, I came to Word of Grace and sat here and watched different documentaries, and those saved me, just to see, like, here life is so fast compared to life in eternity with him. So I think just putting my mind to that, I'm like, this is a blimp of what I'm going, in that moment of that sadness, that one day that I'm sad or whatever it may be. It happens so quick.
And that was my last question, like how your faith played into your, I'm going to say recovery, because you're probably always still maybe be susceptible to going back to being anxious or the depression. So you just talked a little bit about it. Do you want to add anything else about your faith? And
I mean, well, I'm still on medication and I still see a therapist, but my number one is faith. I love where I go to church. I mean, there's a lot of great ones out there, obviously, but they always talk about churches outside these walls on Sunday. So I think that's huge for me to keep practicing and just saying prayers at night. Or we talk at work about getting girls together, us group, and doing, different groups with each other and going through the Bible or whatever it may be. I think that plays a huge factor in it. Like I said, I don't always make it to church on Sundays. We're lucky with technology. We can watch it from home now in the comfort of our home, but just those messages, and I write down notes and I can go back to those, or even if I don't, I know that they're there.
Yeah,
that's really...
I think people don't, sometimes people, religion, and I just think that Jesus is the hope of the world. And for you, that's true. There might be people watching that don't believe that, and that's okay. But we want them to know that there is hope. So if they need a church, they can come here to Word of Grace. They can check it out.
There's so many. And that's the thing too, like at Word of Grace, what I love personally, I mean, like I said, I grew up Catholic, which was great. It gave me that foundation and it gave me that love for God. But here, I mean, I remember walking in the first time, there's like live bands and people are chit-chatting. There's no pews. I'm like, Katie, where am I right now? Like, what is this? And she's like, it's church. Like, just my concept of church and what it actually can be is totally different. And I think that's a huge thing. And sometimes I even tell people, I'm like, even if you're not sure if you are a believer or not, if you come and you sit here and you can take out that religion part if you want. But we talk about current issues or different things that people are going through. And yes, they apply to God and that's what helps me. But if you take out that part, there's still a great message that can save you. And which I've gotten people to come visit and they agreed and they still listen and they love that. But obviously I'm a believer. So it's easy for me to come and sit and have a cup of coffee and listen.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I want to thank you so much for sharing your story. I hope it helped a lot of people. And, you know, this world it needs a little more kindness, especially right now with COVID and people are really struggling. Relationships are struggling. Individuals are struggling. So I thank you and for showing kindness to others and for being willing to help others who may be struggling right now with things that you have gone through. So we're going to put up a few resource slides here for people to connect, and we'll get your information if anyone wants to connect with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would not mind that at all.
Okay,
Just
wonderful.
letting them know it's okay to have these feelings, but it's not okay to not do anything about it.
That's
and
right.
That's a huge thing that I've learned.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much,
Yes,
Brittany.
thank you.
You're welcome.